see if the video's live? Oh, okay. It says it's still publishing. Oh, thank you. It says it's still publishing.
Here's the funny thing about this. Every time I go to click on my search on Google, your name, the Empire of Aeternia, instantly goes there. Really cool. I'll click that.
I'm pretty hyped about it.
Oh, that's just scary. I'm watching the live stream.
Oh, what is it? Oh, did it come up?
Yeah.
Hey!
Probably.
Going through and erasing stuff so I have as much blue as I can get.
Mm.
Alright, what's an outside interview then? Okay. You good?
Yeah.
Bet. Sorry to make you wait, man.
No, this is what it takes setting all this up. So it's just,
Hello, everybody. I am really excited to announce that Gray's here.
Hello,
Gray
everyone.
came to visit Eternia, and I'm super hype about it. I see some of you guys are in the live chat already. What's going on, KTM? What's going on, Andrew Carter and Thomas? Glad to see you guys hanging out with us. Oh, Tiffany, do you think you could do me a favor? Could you post the link in the Discord, or could somebody post the link in the Discord? If you guys on the live stream could do that too, be cool. But yeah.
solid.
I think you wanted to do some interview questions.
Yeah,
and stuff?
some interview questions and stuff. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, for anyone out there, come visit Eternia too.
Absolutely.
It's a wonderful place to visit. So, the famous forge, by the way.
Of course.
Yeah. Let me get my camera set up, and let's throw some questions out there.
Absolutely.
And this is ground control to Major Tom. I don't know how long I'll be singing that song.
I feel you. What band is that?
It's a shame that I don't know it.
These are the tough questions.
Yeah, these are the real tough questions. I don't get. This is ground control. Oh, see, I should know. And we're sitting in a tin hat. Yeah. Okay.
We have 4 viewers. Nice.
Wonderful. Solid. Do we want to talk and wait for some more people to join before we get into questions, or do we want to hop into that now?
Let's go ahead.
Let's go. Okay. All right. Question 1 is: where does micronationalism not fit into society?
Interesting. Where does it not fit into society?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's an interesting question because it can kind of be interpreted multiple ways. I feel like, to the largest degree, I would want to say it fits in everywhere in society. You know what I mean?
Right.
I think the coolest thing about micronationalism is that it really is. I think we were talking about Delvera the other day, and saying how they treat it very much as a lifestyle, and I think that's accurate because micronationalism, when you're saying you're creating a country, and if you're trying to take that seriously, you really are doing something that is taking all of you. So I think it's hard to say that there isn't a place where it fits in. I think that there's definitely it's definitely a smaller group. I think it's a group of people right now who are particularly passionate about it and trying to make their lives about it. So I don't think it's necessarily something that should be in every aspect of society.
Right.
But I do think that there's nowhere that it couldn't fit, if that
Okay.
makes sense.
Okay. A leading question into this one is due to the nature of micronationalism, right, where you're a small nation usually within another nation.
Yeah.
Is it okay to try to fit into society as a micronationalist, into the society around you, or is it better as a micronationalist to just be like, no, I'm not part of the society around me. Where do you feel on that?
I feel like there's definitely an importance in both. It
Okay.
depends on your approach to micronationalism, I suppose.
Okay.
If you have created a micronation to say, I am specifically trying to go out of my way to be disconnected from the society that I'm a part of, if I'm trying to get others to help leave that society and build something new, that's a perfectly fine way to go about it. So I can see people being on one extreme very, very isolationist and just wanting to do things for their people, by their people.
Right.
On the other hand, I personally am somebody who works with the macronational government that I'm a part of, and in supporting the communities that I've come from, I'm trying to make a nation which I see as better, making improvements on the things that I feel like is lacking in my home country. So the thing that's so important to me is ensuring that there is that nice mix. I think for those who choose to be as independent as possible, there are a ton of advantages because that really draws in support from people who want to see that. But on the flip side, you may be missing a lot of the people who are like most of us, who don't want to fully step into something that's going to take us out of our normal life, out of our everyday. It's a lot nicer to be able to meet people in the middle and be able to explain, this is how micronationalism can affect your life right now without causing you to do sweeping changes in the way you live.
Okay.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So where do you think that line eventually goes to as a micronationalist? In other words, like, let's say your nation becomes bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
Where does that line of, hey, I fit into society, or I can no longer fit into society? And this happens often, if there's like a group of people from another country that come and live in America, we're like, oh, that's blah 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 town, right?
Yeah.
And to some extent, some Americans are like, well, I wish they would fit in more, and some Americans were like, well, they're just being free in here. Where does that line as a micronationalist? Where does that line start and end, and where do people? Should people split off? Should people do that inside of micronation, inside of America? What are your thoughts?
So I think that's I think that's an interesting perspective to take. I know that for most micronationalists, it is kind of seen as something where you want to create your own culture and you want to stand out. So that is incredibly important to sort of make wherever it is that you're going to define your space as truly something recognizable and iconic.
Okay.
So when people come to your micronation, they absolutely should feel like, hey, I'm stepping into Eternia, I'm stepping into Delveria, I'm stepping into wherever it is that you call home.
Right.
But at the same time, I think that that shouldn't, if you're trying to reach a larger audience of people, you shouldn't make that exclusive. You shouldn't say only Delverians can come here, only Eternians can come here. It should definitely be something where you're actively trying to understand the needs of the people around you.
Right.
I think the point where that switches is as things get larger, I think it adapts. I don't think, for my case, for Eternia, that connection to the United States, for example, will ever be shut off. I don't think we're anti-United States. I think what the important factor to take in is to say, what do people around us need? What are they lacking? What would they come here to find? And what void can we fill? So just like you would go to a store that specializes in a specific thing to get that, we want to be an equivalent. If you have specific issues with the way your society's run, this is the place you come to fix that. This is the place you come to address that in your own life.
Okay.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's wonderful. So then, what is the difference between a micronation and a cult?
That's a great question. I've actually thought about that quite a lot myself because I've had questions posed to me like that before. Like, well, what's the difference between this and a cult? Or like, do you think that micronations could become cults, or do you think there are some that are? I think that's kind of the issue, is that it's about the people who are in it. I think what defines a cult versus, say, a religious organization, or a cult versus a political organization, or anything like that, is what the logic of the organization is. If you're going from a top-down structure where you're saying, I'm somebody who wanted to be in power, who wants people in power underneath me, who then you're designing a system based around your own individual interest in having something powerful. That may lead to a cult-like behavior. That's something that would be all about an individual, all about trying to serve the purposes of an individual and whatever their whims are from moment to moment. But I think when you are looking at something and saying, this needs to exist so long as this larger problem exists in the world, so long as there is an issue that other people recognize besides myself as an issue, and we're trying to solve that, hopefully that will lead people into a more community mindset for how to tackle bigger issues under the guise of an organization. I think to the point where you say this organization is going to survive beyond any need for it to, beyond anyone's will for it to, at that point you start to get into a cult. When it's something that is taking from others and not giving anymore, that's a huge issue. So I think.
So do we call that a federal government?
It definitely can be. Well, and that's the thing that's crazy. When you look at places like North Korea and stuff, the what they call the cult of personality there is so insane. When you look at Saudi Arabia, the idea of their leader, their figurehead, being so integral to every single part of their life is insane, because to some degree, I'm sure there is a cultural aspect around supporting your leader and promoting that, but when your leader themselves is designing things and basing things around support for themselves and ensuring that they maintain power and maintain support, you cannot at that point feasibly say that you are helping your people and having their interests in mind first. With Aeternia, I definitely want to be able to build up my family with this and be able to be successful personally in it. But at the same time, I don't expect that my family will be leading Aeternia for all time. I don't expect that this is something that is based around Aiden or AP. I think this is something based around people's need for a symbol.
Right.
And as long as there are people who are fueling that symbol, as long as the people who are important to that continue to push it, that's who I want to be sure is staying at the top of power.
Okay, absolutely.
I hope that answered the question.
It does. And something I do kind of want to add to that is in the context of a nation helping itself too much, and the power of the government helping itself too much, is that what I hear often with micronationalists that express themselves, people reply to like, oh, isn't that like a cult? Isn't that like a cult? Isn't that this horrible thing? But people don't realize how much emotional power their government has over their life, and not just in America, but in so many other countries. And people don't realize that they're basically being spoon-fed on a chain.
Yeah.
And micronationalism, I believe inherently in and of itself, wants to make your own food, wants to live on your own land, wants to raise your own family and take care of things. And the attitude, I think the biggest difference between a cultist and a micronationalist is that a micronationalist isn't afraid to be alone. And something that I've seen in a lot of leadership in the micronational community is how they understand what it's like to be alone. They understand what it's like to be independent, to work hard for things, to have a dream and a vision. Where some people that I've seen that were in something very similar to cult and very strong, their desire was to have their needs met. And that we were willing to do whatever it took to have someone else meet their needs. And I think we see that very strongly in America. We're very big about how much can I be given as long as I'm loyal. And I think that's a major difference between a cult, and no matter how big of a government, small you governor you are, and between a micronationalist and what their ideals are.
No, I completely agree. And I think that's going back to like the North Korean example.
Yeah.
That's something that's so important about micronationalism, is that in something like a cult, or something like if you were to go to somewhere, a macronational country, where you have a similar leadership style, you would be forced into that idea. When someone joins a cult, their personality, their essence, their culture is then changed and morphed into the groupthink of that society, whatever they're in. The difference in a micronation is that micronations, from what I've seen, are generally excited to accept the new opinions of people who come in and to adapt their cultures based around those new inclusive members. So the thing that's exciting about that is that in a micronation, anyone can come and go when they please.
Yeah.
You can say there are these aspects to citizenship and these are the things that we expect, but ultimately it is all by will of the people who are a part of it. So
Absolutely.
if your micronation isn't going to be successful, it's going to be it's not going to be successful because there's a specific need it's not meeting, and vice versa. If you're successful, only remember that success is based around a need.
Absolutely. Solid. I'm gonna pause this camera.
Absolutely.
And restart for the next. I think he's recording.
Ooh, we have a whole bunch of comments.
Oh, do we? Wonderful. Wonderful.
Okay, so Cool Guy Studios says, I also have a micronation. Mine's the Kingdom of Ameristan. Interesting. What's the choice on the name there? KTM said, you guys liking the interview? Yay. And Cool Guy Studios says, does Harvone have a prime minister? I'm liking these good specific questions. I feel like I'm watching a news interview, says KTM. Kingdom of Harvone says, absolute monarchy. A lot of people are talking about their micronation. Very nice. Okay. Cool deal.
Solid.
I really appreciate the question.
Nice. Okay. Solid.
Yeah.
All right. Oh yeah. Let me start the door if you need help.
Gotcha.
This is my first live stream.
Oh yeah.
For like this, I mean, when I was working on a feature film, we did like a few of those.
Yeah.
But that was a different environment.
Oh,
Different
of course.
environment. This is what I'm doing, what I'm loving. And
I feel you, man. But the doing it for a feature film seems cool because you could actively explain like the process behind it and sort of build it up.
yeah. This is good. Okay, I think this is something that's been, at least on this channel, talked about a lot. But for the sake of people that are not a micronationalist, but curious, what is the difference between a fantasy micronation? What would you call a fantasy micronation? And what would you consider a realist micronation?
It's crazy because all the time I see people on Discord especially, and on the Reddit and things like that, even if they don't call it by those same terms, every single micronationalist has a thing that like is their limit for realism. Like they're like, I'll allow anything. I'll allow like Nerf gun armies. I'll allow like all these different things. But if you don't like have this much property, it doesn't count.
Right.
It's really interesting. The thing for me that constitutes a fantasy micronation is one that has assigned itself to the idea that it's not going to be it's not going to pursue a larger goal.
Okay.
When a micronation says, we are not interested in sincerely helping people, we're interested in designing like an online community, we're interested in doing something that isn't actually trying to create a nation, that's what I consider a fantasy nation. So things that are moving further and further. Plane! I hope that's not terrible for the audio, but I imagine it is. We have planes here, guys. It's crazy.
When I lean in here to the camera, am I cutting him off or in the shot at all? When I'm right here? Am I in the shot? No? No, I don't want to be in the shot. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't.
You look like a very serious director behind the camera. You have like a cigarette. You're like, good.
Yeah, because I saved my tobacco, I just rolled my own cigarettes.
Very
That's
nice.
why I didn't eat any last night.
Solid. So what are we looking at here now?
We're looking at him. Yep, I moved it so you're not in the shot.
Okay.
You want to record
Once
on
in, yeah, do a few.
Let me
shots
use
for-
this table.
Solid.
Yeah.
Difference between a realist micronation and a fantasy micronation.
Yes. So I think it's based on the goals of that micronation. If a nation is resigning itself to not being serious, if they're resigning themselves to not moving toward realistic goals, then of course that's considered fantasy in my opinion. The more nuance comes in when you start to take into account things that a micronation may be doing, though they're not specifically saying that they're a fantasy nation. A lot of micronations will claim to be realist, but will do things that are very opposite. So I definitely think everybody should take a time as they're creating a nation to go over and over again, what is it that I'm really trying to achieve? Am I more interested in designing a culture? Am I more interested in creating something that appears to be a nation and doing something fun with that, which is perfectly fine? or doing something that is sincerely trying to create a country to support other people and a population and an economy. Um, if you are a fantasy nation, there should be nothing wrong with that. And I think people embracing fantasy should be something that they lean more towards, because everybody calling themselves a realist and most not being is kind of a difficult thing to come across.
Right. So earlier you mentioned one of the major differences between a fantasy and a realist is the idea of a realistic goal, or having realistic goals.
Yeah.
So talk to me about how one can define properly realistic goals. So an example is, we can look at some micronations and they just dive so deep into the titles, into their government structure, into like, how do we deal with the homeless, and they don't have a plot of land.
Right.
So talk to me about that.
Well, I think that's incredibly interesting, because one of the guys that I've followed before, Darren for Super President, he had kind of an interesting idea about micronationalism, and he was saying that micronationalism to him is a way to do charitable work. And I think that while that is definitely a noble goal, I think that doesn't necessarily parallel micronationalism. I think many micronations do have exterior motives that are to specifically say, with West Arctica, help the environment, do different things that are outside of the scope of their individual nation. But I think that it can be either culture, or it can be something that is assigned of a fantasy nation, depending on how that's set up. All nations should be able to take on goals that are larger than they can achieve right now. I'm interested in creating an economy, and I'm in a backyard. That's something that I'm actively working toward. But it should definitely be something that's taken into account to ask, well, am I going to then build a structure in a nation that's going to help serve that cause, or am I just trying to serve that cause? If you don't have a good idea or concept around creating a nation that would solve that issue, that just may not be the best approach. There may be an easier, simpler way to go about it. So I think realistic goals for a nation are understanding how that can naturally play into solving the issues that you're trying to solve.
Okay. So what is the like one of the most important pieces of advice, 1 to 3 pieces of advice for leaders in the micronational community that you would have?
Fantastic question. I think the first biggest thing is to just try and be yourself. You said it very eloquently, that most micronationalists know isolation, just in the sense that they know that when they start out, you're starting out kind of with nothing. You're starting out by yourself with this interest, with this idea. I think the great thing about the community that's been growing, actually, is that people I see all the time on Reddit and on our Discord, they'll come in and they'll say, I'm just starting a nation, I have no idea what I'm doing, and there's a big supportive community there. But for a long time, and especially when I came in, it was hard to find other people in the community. So a lot of people understand starting that yourself. And so I would say the biggest, most important thing is to be yourself, to have that interest in mind first, is why you created that nation, what your passion for it is. And then from there to try and sculpt your realist or fantasy nation from that naturally. Don't try and force your thing to be realist or fantasy if that's not the direction you would go naturally. The second biggest piece of advice is that if you are trying to become a leader in the micronational community, and that's something that is inherent to who you are, you're not only wanting to become an impact as far as creating a nation, but you're wanting to go so far as to help other nations, to connect nations. You really have to keep in mind other people's needs. We talked about that a little while ago, in trying to fit a need to your cause, to your resources, I suppose. But the biggest thing that I feel like is important is trying to ensure that those people that you're working with are actively being able to move toward their goals in parallel with yours. If somebody's goals are opposite to yours, it may not be ideal to work together. Or if they are opposite, finding a way to make that mutually beneficial. So I think trying to understand who you are, what you're doing, and then secondly, in hand with that, understanding other people will help you to really grow a community that people care about and that people feel like they want to invest more and more in. The final thing, I guess, I'd say is to just make sure that as you go along in your life, that it's sustainable for you. Micronationalism, I've never seen a micronationalist be like, I spent all my money and now I'm homeless because I spent all my money on a micronation. But I definitely think it's something that does take a lot of energy and a lot of time. So ensuring that you as an individual in your life, that does fit naturally into where you're going and in your own personal interests is difficult, because a lot of micronationalists will come in and they'll start something, especially when they're younger. They'll have this name, they'll have this flag, and then 2 weeks, a month, a year later, they'll say, well, I didn't really get any traction, I'm going to drop out of it. It's too much to keep up and not enough payout.
Right.
So I think feeling like that is a natural part of your life and a natural extension of you is really important. And if it ever becomes like a really big struggle or difficulty to keep going, it just may not be in your wheelhouse. There may be something better for you to do with your time.
Okay. This reminds me of a conversation that we had some time ago with Vera, and the discussion was, I think like a micronation had a bunch of money and they were wanting to do something, and just the conversation that come up was just like, invest that into yourself, invest that into some kind of future, but trying to get something to make yourself look better or feel good. But then another micronation mentioned that they had bought was it like a building to put on their land, and that it had greatly made the whole community much more encouraged and much more excited. And it was good to hear like two sides of the border, you know, like we did something for our micronation to encourage us, to help us grow, and the other conversation of investing in yourself.
Absolutely. I think there was one, I'm not sure if this was the same conversation, but there was one conversation talking about somebody asking like if they should buy like a suit of armor or like something like that.
Yeah.
And I think it's very much along those same lines where if it's something that's interesting and important to you, sure, go ahead and do that. But if you're looking at that as a way to specifically affect your view in the micronational community or whatever, just putting in time is just as effective. So no, I completely agree. There's like personal interest in micronationalism, and then there's like interest for the purpose of your nation, whatever you're doing.
Right. Absolutely. All right. I'm gonna pause this.
I was just gonna take a look at some comments.
Yeah.
Dominion of Steel and Iron said, yo. KTM said, what's your opinion on fantasy nations? We were just talking about that.
I'm gonna run to the restroom to clean fast.
Yeah, absolutely. Kingdom Carbone, who says, interesting Wilma scene, says, long time since I've been here. It's good to see you, Will. We have 7 viewers. We're going up. Yeah, I appreciate it. Also, thank you for joining. I saw your name. Yeah. You're super incognito. Nobody knows. We're having a quick intermission, guys. So if you need to do some intermission things, this would be the time to do it. I'm liking Empire of Aeternia's interview. I like the new and specific questions. Oh, awesome. Thank you. I appreciate your support, KTM. We're trying to hit these good questions. These are actually Gray's questions. I was really excited when he said he wanted to do an interview, and it seems like he came really prepared. I'm impressed. I really like it. And I'm excited to have a citizen in the Empire of Aeternia. I don't know if I've talked about this much yet, but I want to do it in another video. My hair's being weird. I really want to talk about this in another video, but the idea that another citizen of Aeternia, another person is coming from across the country to visit us, to spend time and help us build our nation is really, really a big deal, and it's an important milestone, and it's a huge part of our history now. So I think that's going to be something exciting. We're probably going to come out with a couple of videos. I think Gray's going to put out a video about our time together, and then I'm going to probably put together a little compilation and just thank him and everything for coming out. But it was fantastic to meet someone. We have done a little bit of filming, as you guys will see, but there was a ton that was off camera just because it was so important for us to be able to hang out and just to get to know each other and to spend that time as, you know, for what it is, to kind of be in that historic moment. So I definitely think it's something exciting to get into. And I can't wait for the next time. Ooh. I wanted to compliment you on your dress today. It looks very nice. Yeah. It looks comfy too. Like it.
Nice and thin, but like thick.
Yeah. If I imagine it's like soft and like close to your skin.
So I'm like, I don't know why I did
Super cool. I imagine it feels like a blanket, like being wrapped around you. Nice.
So I wear the little turtleneck that goes with it.
Oh yeah. I have one turtleneck that I own, and it's a little black one. And it's kind of the same way. I really like wearing it because it feels like a hug. Like it's just it's nice.
I like with this because of my neck is a little short.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be like this, but it doesn't look right. It doesn't. It looks weird. So like I fold it.
Yeah, kind of get it pulled down a little bit.
Yeah. So it's like a turtleneck, but it's not also choking you in the process.
It's a good way to do it.
You have like a solid minute of delay.
Oh yeah.
Compared to here.
Oh yeah. That's every single time that happens. Well, because people will like be talking on the live streams, and then they'll watch it and they'll be like, "What? I just said that." But why is it so laggy? Or people will like comment about something and then not realize that it was like just said right then, and then it comes up a second later.
Speaking of congratulating you and stuff.
Oh, absolutely. He did come prepared. Shows how serious it is. Absolutely, agreed. Super cool. Kingdom of Harvone said my suit broke. How'd your suit break? Like you had like a suit and it like just it fell apart. But how'd your suit break? I'm concerned for you. It's not that big a deal. It's already here. Yeah, well, because I was trying to figure out if it was a shadow or my hair dangling in my face, and it's the hair dangling in my face. Yeah. So I was like, eh. Do you prefer doing the hand-rolled cigarettes? Do you feel like it's...
It honestly doesn't bother me either way. If I get it pre-rolled and if I gotta roll, it's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I prefer it way how I actually do it because it's not too tight and I can control how much tobacco I can put in here. For example, this is very thin. Well, maybe because it's cigar tobacco.
Oh.
But I can control how much I want to put into it.
Cigar tobacco's like super strong though, isn't it?
Yeah, that's why it's slowly going down. I'm
Got
like,
you.
no dizziness, but I still want.
I
Still
feel
lit?
you.
Not yet. Oh, why?
Oh, I don't know why.
I would love one. Thank you.
Can I get more water?
Yes, please, if you don't mind. Thank you. KTM said, I mean the cuts somehow broke. Interesting. I'm sorry to hear that. It seems like you need to learn how to sew. Or go to a seamstress. Seam person.
Yep, seamstress.
Yeah. I'm like sneaking peeks at these questions.
Nothing wrong with getting yourself a little prepared.
I know, right? I gotta hone in my answers. I feel like I'm always like rambly when I answer questions, but I hope it gets the point across.
It's not really rambling if you're
But I
actually
feel
being
like
very
underneath
full
all of
with your
that is
answers.
just
I appreciate it. That's very nice.
I was just saying about the fantasy micronations. You answered very well with like how you gave the reason A, reason B, and then reason C.
the building is this grappling?
Yes, it is.
Great, would you like a water? Thank you.
Am I holding everyone up?
You're good. We're chilling. The good thing about live streams is the longer they are, the better it is for the channel. So just
Excuse me, I'm
be
gonna drive
chilling.
back to Massachusetts. I'll be right back.
Yeah, it will be good.
Get all that watch time in.
If I had the internet capabilities for it, I would really love to do like a server and to just run a music live stream on the channel and just rack up watch time hours. But yeah, that would get expensive quick.
Yeah, right. Thank you, dear.
Oh yeah, it's getting serious. We actually did some forging yesterday.
Oh
It was super cool. Alright. My cord for my phone. I think so.
I wanted to pull up this.
Another.
So. KTM. If I'll ask about foreign policy, I can. I'm also shooting an interview for a documentary. So if you guys have other questions that you guys want to throw in, just go for it. We're all shooting stuff for different videos and different things that we're doing. So y'all got questions, he got answers.
Hit
So
us up.
Hit us up. All right, sounds beautiful. Let's get into what does micronationalism. Oh, I should start this guy here.
Gotcha.
That will actually help.
Sometimes it's just about the moment.
Yeah, right. Okay, does micronationalism have an important role in history and also in modern history? Does it have a role and or value?
So I feel like it's really interesting because the impact of just about anything on history is the slow progression of people over time. A lot of the major events in history weren't things that just all of a sudden happened for no reason. They were things that were building up based on tensions between different groups of people, based on the way that cultures were built and societies were founded, based on class struggles, political struggles. All of the things that make history what it is seem to have been something that started with a very small spark. And so I think that for micronationalism, it's a very similar thing. I think the reason micronationalism is growing so much in popularity is a symptom of larger issues within the nations that are in power right now. So I think depending on where micronationalism goes in the future, it may have a very large impact on world history and on modern history. But I think even if it stays just something that is an independent interest among a fairly small minority of people, it still shows that there was this entire group of people during the 21st century who were actively trying to make new governments because they didn't like their old government. Like, I feel like somebody in the future doing a history paper or something like that, that'd be like a really cool niche topic, even if it was something that was just really small.
Yeah.
It would be crazy to see, and especially how well documented all of it is, to see these people who are coming from just being individuals to declaring their own cultures, deciding on what is important for their lives, and kind of taking their own spin on it. I definitely think it's a great time to be alive, for sure.
It is, absolutely. Something I just want to add into that and throw in that is that because micronationalists, I think is something that's been repeated throughout history so many times.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of those, whether or not they're good things or bad things, rise up because people had things that weren't working for them today, right? So I have an interesting question about modern micronationalism and modern micronationalism in America.
Yeah.
We are currently facing so many cultural warfares in our country. Mm-hmm. Now, micronationalism, any nation in and of itself, will have its own established culture of some form. It will have its own government, blah, 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 right?
Yeah.
So as a micronationalist leader, what is the fine line that one has to have, right, in order to, at the same time, not everyone's going to want to agree for the same things and want to be on the same page for everything. Some people just don't want you to be free, and that's just how it is. There's nothing we can do about it. So what lines should a leader or any micronationalist carry, though not being racist, though not being hateful towards other people? What is that fine line of saying, but we are Aeternian, we are from West 2, we are American, Achaean, Dalverian, like, doesn't matter. What is that fine line that they have to carry within themselves, but at the same time not being racist? And as a leader, how does one create that pathway that doesn't tear anything apart but creates a space?
I think that's a fantastic question. The biggest thing about that is that's really an individual interest. There are a lot of groups that I've seen that really are based around a specific part of someone's life that's been developed in the past. There are specific things. For example, Cascadia is someone that I follow on Twitter, and they're a big like socialist communist thing. They have a big feminist and equal rights push to them. So that's definitely a design around their culture. They're saying we're trying to be inclusive of all these people, but we also are inclusive to the ideology that we support. If you don't support that ideology, you're not Cascadian. Very similarly with other groups, there are plenty of religious micronations where they say we accept people of other religions or whatever, but ultimately, if you're going to be a part of this nation, you're going to be this religion. So I think it's weird because you should always want to support equality and you should always want to support inclusiveness, but I think there are plenty of micronations that are designed around being exclusive to an individual group. I think Aeternia is something different, where we have specific goals that we're trying to reach that don't require us to have a specific type of person. We're trying to develop a culture as we go, so it's something that'll be ever changing and ever developing, but I know that there are plenty of nations who are going the opposite way, that have a foundation that they're interested in setting, that they have a culture that they've already pre-designed. So I think that just is two different types of micronationalists.
Okay, so a question I have to ask is, to be someone of a certain nation, right? Say I'm American, right? I act American. I'm from Brazil, right? I can identify my culture with other people of similar cultures, because I'm able to see that we have a baseline, something that we share. So for micronationalists who are starting out building a micronation, how does one avoid, right, the difference between a cult, which is something we've talked about, and culture?
Ooh, I like that. I would say the biggest thing to do is to make sure you are being open and transparent to your community. The micronational community is an interesting place because, one, it's very, very supportive. There are very few ideas that just get completely shut down or bashed in the micronational community. You can normally find people who are encouraging. The other thing, though, is that almost all micronationalists are very, very straightforward when it comes to their answers. I think part of that's because a lot of these people are on the internet. But it is interesting.
True, yeah, right.
But it is definitely interesting to see that if someone does something that is more controversial in the micronational community, people are ready to talk about it, and they're ready to ask, not just to call it out, but to ask sincere questions about why are you trying to do it this way. We want to have a dialogue about your reasoning for creating an entire nation around some specific point, or developing your nation into this thing. People are very open about taking sides and about showing support or disdain for something. So if you are really being open to the micronational community, you will always have people who disagree with what you're doing, but if you are ever doing something alarming, you will know that very quickly. So I think as long as you are whether you are the leader of a micronation, make sure for your people's sake that everything that you're doing and operating with them is as transparent as possible. And then as a community at large, making sure that you are all trying to get feedback and input, and saying, whether you're an individual citizen in a micronation or whether you're the leader, saying, hey guys, what is it that you think of my micronation? What is it that you think of the way that we're going about doing things? I have these ideas that I want to pitch. I have these things that I want to do. What is it that the micronational community gets out of that? What is it that everybody sees as the angle to this?
Something I want to throw into that, and I agree with what you're saying, I think it's really important. Something I want to add to this is something that I think in the micronational community there's a disparity of self-education for the purpose of personal growth. And so I think we were joking about this yesterday. You know, we get all the titles and whatnot, but when you ask them, hey, what's the definition of rights? They look at you with a blank eye. They're like, huh? And I think something to add to this, to what you're saying here, is that when you study as an individual self and you surround yourself with people that are more passionate about knowing what's right and the truth and just want to learn, something that Dylan Callahan said from Delvera. He said to me, really just jogged my mind. He said, I get it, not everyone gets along and everything, but what if you have to work together? And something that I've seen in the micronational community that I don't think is a good thing is that we're too easily willing to say, well, you don't agree with me, you're not my kind of person.
Right.
Peace. I think it's important to know when you need to split ways, but I also think it's important to say, what is that other person saying? What am I actually saying? And being willing to challenge each other. I think the biggest difference between micronation and a cult is that people in a cult, sure, they have to work with each other, but it's through a particular venue.
Right.
You just have to take it up with our president. You have to take it up with our God leader over here. Whereas I think micronationalists, because of their natural sense of independence and their purpose to do something with their life, it's easier to just walk away from each other. But to stay educated and then purpose to say, what happens if we have to work with each other?
Yeah.
I think that challenge will make the difference between a cult and a micronation, but also push that micronation to be a better future. And that's something that Aeternia does too, and I think it's great. There's all sorts of people in Aeternia, all sorts of opinions, and we're talking, and we're in the dialogue, and we're challenging each other. So that's just something I wanted to.
No, I completely agree. I think just to respond to that, one
Yeah.
of the that's one of the great traits of a leader. I think you were talking about that there may be people of differing opinions than you, but you should find a way to work with those people. That's a huge advantage. If you have people who don't share the same beliefs as you, but you are able to find a way that makes it all beneficial for you to work together and makes it natural for you to all work together, that's a great leadership model. That's something that said, we have found a purpose that can satisfy a lot of people's needs. We have something that is designed well. It's not only something by a charismatic leader, it's not only something that has good people in it, but it's something that's going to stand the test of time because it works for a large group of people.
Absolutely. This is exciting. This is exciting.
Absolutely.
I'm going to kill this and then we'll move to the next No!
Battery?
Yeah, the battery.
Damn.
No!
My thing went off a long time ago. I feel it, yeah.
It was like, should I? No.
No. 10 minutes and it's like,
Yeah. Honey, do you know what the charger is?
It's in the car.
Is it in the car? I'm just going to throw this on if you're cool with that.
yeah, absolutely. Not a problem. I'm gonna answer.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, also, I didn't know if you saw your water.
Oh, beautiful. Wonderful.
Welcome back. KTM said, I've been repeating the questions in chat to try and keep us interested on the subject and create discourse. Thank you, KTM. Definitely hit us up. I'm excited to see like people's answers to all this. KTM says he did come prepared. KTM says, I wonder if you'll ask about foreign policy. You responded to that already, I think. And then KTM says it's a series. Nice. Definitely. You should absolutely show us some sewing stuff if you know how to sew. That's impressive. The person on here who like broke their suit apparently knows how to sew. So that's cool. I want to learn some cool sewing tricks. I know how to sew a little bit, but I'm not a master seamstress. Is seamstress a gender-based thing, or is it the title of the
You might just
thing?
say,
Like, do you say
tailor or
seamster
something.
or tailor? Tailor. That'd probably be it.
I use that when I'm not, like, like, you can go to a tailor and get the buttons fixed, all that. So I think tailor is a guy and seamstress is a girl.
Gotcha.
But,
Oh my gosh, you say such a funny argument. You guys are talking about literally
Actor and actress. Yeah.
yeah, I
call them things.
can literally just tailor.
Yeah.
That's what I do.
Fair.
I haven't used the word seamstress in forever because usually whenever I get my clothes fixed, it's always a guy doing it.
Yeah.
Or one chick I had her try to have to fix my coat and she couldn't even fix it.
So you're like going to guys now.
They
Guys.
fixed my coat.
Yeah.
They're like, you can't. She said that you couldn't save my coat.
Yeah.
It was impossible. The zipper broke off.
Interesting.
So
I-
like, okay, you don't know how to fix the zipper.
I was like, I don't think, unless it's like just ripped up bits of fabric. I was like, I think they can fix most
Yeah,
things.
that's what I was thinking too. But that's why I went to the tailor and they ended up fixing my coat and actually made it look nice and shiny afterwards.
Ooh. Very cool.
Because I told them about what happened to one seamstress and they were like, don't worry about it. $30.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, she was trying to charge like 60. I'm like, that's a
obviously double the amount.
She's like, this is an impossible task, but I could accomplish it for $60.
Yeah, I'm like, I'll go find somewhere else.
Yeah. Interesting.
Glad I did. I got free coat clean.
Super cool.
Solid. Okay, just pulling into some things here.
You want to sit? You got a cool loop here.
Solid. I want to get into some of these questions. I think I can. The ones for the interview for the documentary, I want to wait for this. I have some Eternian questions, very specific for you on Aeternia.
I'm excited.
Me too. Let's see here.
Eternia specific.
Eternia
This is
specific.
what you've all been waiting for.
When will Aeternia take over the world?
What time is
Tomorrow?
It? What time is it? It depends. In like an hour? We'll see.
Yeah, boy. Yeah, boy.
It's, immediately.
Immediately?
That's the big issue.
I found some donuts this morning that I got, so if you're interested in some donuts,
I would love a donut.
I don't know if Eternians eat donuts. Do we eat donuts?
We do eat donuts. Yeah, we eat most things, I think.
You eat most things?
Yeah.
Solid.
That's one of the cool things about having a diverse culture.
Yeah,
That,
right?
like, you can get all different types of
You
people.
get donuts.
I literally got you towards me. Yeah, you know what? That's the funny part, though.
It was a perfect way to end it. A donut. It is. It's a Snickers donut. It's really cool.
If they made a Snickers donut, I would totally eat it.
If they made a Snickers donut, I would buy Snickers.
If you think about it, it's kind of like how when people do an apple pie donut, it's just like, you know, like, hey, limited edition, it's in
A Snickers donut would be a powerful thing.
Mm-hmm.
They could rule the world with their donuts.
It's Dunkin' Donuts that comes.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm going to pop into some just like basic questions for anyone that might be new and watching along. So how old is Eternia?
Eternia was founded in... Okay, so technically, Eternia was founded in 2016. So it's
Okay.
technically 4 years old.
Okay.
We have had the YouTube channel and actively been posting on it for about 2 years.
Okay. How many do you have in attention?
How many do I have?
Having attention, paying attention to Eternia, watching part of the community, difference, in the citizenship versus people that are part of the community. And
Yeah, so that's really interesting. We have getting toward 1,000 subscribers. We have 900 something, I think like 907 right now. And we have close to 100 people on our Discord. We had over 100 people on our Discord, and then it got like messed up. So we have around 100 people on our Discord, a little bit less. We have I think 100 something people following us on Instagram, and then like 30 something followers on Twitter. So
Nice.
we have a few different platforms that we're kind of working with. Yeah.
Absolutely, that's really good. What is Eternia's goal?
701? 909. Hey, we went up 2. That's
909.
awesome. Yeah. As of the filming this, we went up 2.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's so worth it. Oh my goodness. I'm gonna do that.
Yeah, what's up?
I'm just gonna post this to my Facebook, and
Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you.
get more people. I totally forgot about that. It's like blanked out.
No, that would mean
Spacey
a lot.
Casey. Let's see. I'm very technologically illiterate.
Oh, I feel you. It's an issue.
Let's see if I can do this.
Harry Potter. Look professional. We the birds and Gray. They're making a song together. It's an interesting feature.
I'm sorry I had to hear one of those.
I love it. I love it. It's
I don't know, that's pretty loud.
Let's see if I got my from here. Just gonna post. I have a few pages that I'm gonna post it
yeah, please do.
onto and get this going.
I appreciate it. And if you guys would share it, it would help us a lot as well. We have 5 viewers. We're getting up there. Samurai said hello. What's going on, Samurai?
Nani?
There is somebody who was on the channel for a while named Nani.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Yeah, boy.
I don't know where they disappeared to. They just asked the question.
Nani? Okay. Let's see. You know, maybe I should, just to provoke people.
Hit us up. Be controversial.
Let's be controversial. Exactly. No farm was built on untilled land. I'm literally gonna do this because.
What kind of bug is that?
Okay, let's go to micropub.
You see that little?
Sure. I don't know what this is.
You see that little? What is that?
I think it's a baby dragonfly.
Yeah. No, it's a fly.
It's a fly.
It's so still. Flies are normally like everywhere. That one's.
Well, that one just did a flip and
Is it a sweat bee?
might be. It has yellow on it.
I'll start sweating and see what does.
Okay, beautiful.
I never cracked under pressure. Oh yeah. You right. I'm now curious if I like, cause last night when we were digging up those logs and stuff for the fire, that one with the ants all over. I'm curious if one of us just like ripped it out of an anthill. I have no idea how it happened. Either that or if they all came out right when the fire started.
They'll be coming for you now.
Yeah. They're slowly taking revenge.
Yeah.
They're building their numbers.
Possibly if you let one loose.
Yeah, you're right. They went to report.
I saved the big one because like the big ones are usually the most useful for the ant colony. The small ones die instantly.
Oh really? Interesting.
I don't know if it was a queen or what because it had a big abdomen.
Yeah.
So
It was thick with three C's.
extra thick.
Like these donuts.
These donuts. Okay. What is the goal of Aeternia?
The goal of Aeternia, I think, is different depending on who you ask, and I would like that to be the case. I feel like every individual Aeternian should have a reason why they're inspired by it, the reason why they're actively pursuing it. I think, at large, the goal for Aeternia is to try and make an environment that can directly help people, that can be something where when someone enters, they have found a community that is actively feeding into their interest and trying to monetarily, educationally, and communally support that person. I think the biggest goal for Aeternia is to show people that there is a better way to structure societies in which inclusivity and strong social connections can build something that is exponentially larger and more productive than what we've seen out of the traditional societies that we have. When the individuals of societies aren't actively encouraged and incentivized based on their entire way of life to be interested in the politics that's local to them, to be interested in their community, to have spaces where they can go outside their house and immediately know they can walk a few feet and find other community members gathered, people that can help them, can help their children. Having a space that actively pulls out of people their best and is actively trying to encourage growth on all levels that people want it is something that I feel like is good for the individual. I feel like a lot of the time what I've been disheartened by with living in the United States is that unless I'm really, 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 really pushing at something, it's hard to find and gather support for it. But I would like to build a space where there are people who are actively looking for that, where that is inspired and encouraged. that if you come up with an idea, there are people to go to immediately for that. There are groups that will help you. There is a sense of, just really connecting with those around you, knowing your neighbor and knowing that that person is a big part of your life.
Okay. What is your goal with Eternia?
My personal goal with Eternia is to see the creation of future generations for my family be taken care of, to be in a place that I feel like I've described just a moment ago, where they know that they're going to be taken care of. They know that they're loved by a community, that they know that they have a home that is an ancestral home for them, that is something that is rooted in who they are. And that doesn't necessarily mean that all of my children have to be Eternia, or have to live here, have to do this and that. But I want it to be something that is always a foundation for them, that they can always come to, that they can always be supported by, and that will always allow them opportunity if they seek it.
What do you want to see from Eternians after you pass?
It's interesting because I've thought about it a little bit, but I've also always been on the fence of like, well, I don't know if Eternia will last very long after I die. I would very much like to set it up to, but I think micronationalism is very based on need. So depending on how that goes, and depending on what the developments and interplay of micronations are at the time, there may be micronations that sprout from that. But if Eternia is around after I die, which I hope it is, and there's a new leadership to take place, I really am considering making that something that is more democratic. I hope to, the biggest reason why I haven't made Eternia a democracy or a republic or anything is because I see the need as of right now to control where Eternia goes.
Absolutely.
And to maintain the ability to keep momentum, even when, like we said, some micronationalists have to do it alone. So when there are peaks and falls with the amount of participation, having that hold on power is important. On the flip side, I think once I die, I would like to have a better understanding of where Eternia is in that moment, and be able to do what's right for those people. So if it is something that is more community driven, making it more democratic, ultimately I would like to see the spirit of what I am trying to do to be kept, without necessarily holding to the rules that I've created. Because the founding fathers of the United States, they were people, I think, who had the ideas of the Enlightenment, of freedom and of liberty and all these things, but they didn't know what that could mean for so many people.
Right.
They were like white slaveholders who were like actively profiting from the institution of slavery.
Mm-hmm.
So they didn't think that equality meant everyone. They thought equality meant for a specific group of people. And so I think that if you're going to say you want freedom for people, if you want independence for people, if you want to take care of people, that shouldn't be limited to one specific time period's ideas or beliefs about that. Once that society changes, once I die, it's no longer up to me what Eternia is, and I don't want it to be. I don't want people to say, AP said this, so that's the way it's going to be in 2086, in 152, whatever.
Right.
I want it to be something that's set to where that I've hopefully inspired people, and that they know where to go once I die. That they feel confident that they can take the next steps.
Okay. So this is going to be a personal question a little bit here.
Yeah.
But how has the average way of life hurt you personally?
Interesting. I think it's a lot about my family. For myself, I felt like my father, in particular, has worked his entire life. Has been incredibly loyal to the businesses that he's worked for. He worked for, well, first he was a teacher. He worked as a teacher for a long time, was never paid very well. That's the plight of teachers all around the country. But he was overworked, underpaid. Then he moved to the oil field in South Louisiana. That's a big industry. And so he worked for a company there, for actually two companies, one where he met my mother, and another one that he worked for through most of his working life. And throughout that time, doing not only physical building on oil rigs, but also doing safety management and health management and things like that for those companies. throughout that entire time, he dedicated his time and his efforts and his personality, just his goodness as a person, to those institutions, and he eventually didn't have anything to show for it. He's 70, 75, 76 years old now, and is still working a job and is still having to do that to provide for himself. I think that is something that's incredibly difficult. That no matter what the ups and downs in people's lives are, that no matter how much they pay into something, if they don't do it the right way, if they're not really careful about it, if they don't make the right sacrifices, it's still just as easy as anyone else to just fall on your butt and be right back in the same place that you started with. It's a lot of effort to actually build into something, a lot of effort and a lot of luck, I think, in the U.S. to build wealth and to build success. I think that there are definitely specific types of people and specific situations that are more beneficial to that. If you don't have kids, if you don't have to have a 9-to-5 job to support a family or a group of people that you support, it's a lot easier to be able to build wealth because you're focusing on yourself. You're doing things that are all about your entrepreneurial spirit or whatever you're passionate about. But my father actually started out before he got into in between teaching and working in the oil field, he was a professional bass fisherman, and he got paid to do that. He got sponsorships. He was on TV, but he didn't. He wasn't able to continue to do that because of the needs of his family and the changing environment that we were in. It wasn't sustainable, and I'm incredibly disappointed by that. I feel like if there were proper institutions in place that were able to support families like that, that it would be a big difference. I think that kind of economic issue has been a big echoing chamber throughout my life, where the schools that I went from a school in South Louisiana that was really, really poor and really underfunded, had a lot of gang violence, had a lot of drugs in it, had a lot of difficulties. Going from that to a situation in Gulf Shores in South Alabama, where there was a high school that everybody had laptops and things like that, which was something I'd never seen before. Seeing such a large change was something that kind of opened my eyes to kind of a big difference in inequality and in the standards set for education. So I think I'm really fortunate to where I've gotten in my own education and pursuing that and seeing how important it is. But I know for a long time throughout my education I didn't see it as important, and there wasn't enough incentive, there wasn't enough people talking to me in the right way to help me get there. And I think that's the same way for a lot of students. So overall, I just feel like there have been a number of ways where there are so many people who are talented, there are so many people who are actively looking for something that can help them in their lives, but may never achieve what they want to or what they could by just not having the support network that's needed. And I think that's a huge fault of our society, because it's not something that we have to do. It's not something that's even to go so far as to say a moral right. We should all be helping each other and paying our taxes to support our neighbor. If that's not your interest, that's not your interest. But economically, if you look at what the investment is on somebody who has a good education, who has the proper support network, they will output a lot more for society. They'll purchase a lot more. So I think it's just a huge oversight that we aren't supporting our communities better and that we're not investing in them. And I think that's what I want to change.
Absolutely. That's wonderful. So how then do you join Aeternia?
How do I join Aeternia?
How does anyone join Aeternia?
How does anyone join Aeternia?
How do people get into that?
I was I don't have to do it. I started.
What?
How does someone join Aeternia? Well, the biggest thing that we want is, because of this idea of everyone helping each other and trying to create something that is more wealthy than the sum of its parts. The most important thing that we want is when someone comes into Aeternia, there needs to be some value created with that. We are absolutely able to help with that. If you come in and you say, I want to help, but I don't know what to do, that's perfectly fine. We have different avenues to take for that. One of the biggest is creating content for us. We have two primary ways to establish citizenship for someone. One is through a tax. You can pay on our Patreon or on our Discord. Definitely hit us up. There is a citizen thing which you can access. It's $1 a month. which you can pay, and that's all you have to do. You're actively providing a tax to the empire. You are a citizen. You're given that right. The other thing is that you can join if you don't have the money, if you don't feel like you can support economically. You can always join by putting in work, by creating content for us, by making crafts for us that we can sell. Just trying to have some way that we know, one, all of our citizens are active members of our community. There are so many micronations that say, I have 800 citizens, I have 1,000 citizens, something like that, but how many of those are actively working every day to create something for that nation? How many, if you have 1,000 citizens, why aren't you the biggest micronation that's ever existed? Molossi is incredibly famous, and they have a small family. But all of that small family is working toward that goal of getting that out there and spreading that message. So I think what's important for Aeternia is that we all work together. Whether you want to do it monetarily, whether you want to do it as an incentive for work and for being your creative self, we want all of that. So those are the two primary ways.
Okay,
Yeah.
wonderful. Do you have frustrations with the American way?
So do you feel like that connects to your previous question about what
How has
faults
the
have been?
average?
Or do you feel like there's something specific you mean by the American way?
There is something specific with the American way. The American way in the context of go to work, get a job, or college in between, went out of school, college, get a job, raise a family, go to retirement home and die.
Well, I think it's just not the mindset of most people in the 21st century. I think it's perfectly fine to do that if that's your interest. But I think the biggest issue is that it's not just the American way by choice, it's the American way by necessity.
Okay.
I feel like we've built a culture around that being the way that you contribute to this society, and that is your working life. That is your ability to be productive and successful for that society. After that, you either need to depend on your family or the wealth that you've generated in that time to support you through your old age, let's say.
So here's an associated question. The next step in this question is,
Yeah.
that's what the methodology for a productive American life,
Mhm.
right? What then are the steps to a productive micronational life? And what are the important key points to raising a nation and raising an empire that one must take? We start with school, we focus on our education as kids, and our education is typically leaning us towards being a beneficial member of this society, whether or not that's in contrast to what's happening around us or that's in support of what's happening around us. Then we go to college and we find a particular degree that helps us live in a society already created to fit our block. Then we work, pay our taxes, and then we die. Those are the steps for living per se as an American, right? What are the steps as a micronationalist that allows one to veer off that path and to grow in a different direction?
Well, so I think earlier we were talking about advice for micronational leaders. I think this is advice for anyone.
Yeah.
Always continue to learn. Always continue to pursue the things that you're passionate about and to learn more and more about those things, to widen your scope. You said we're educated as kids. I think we should always be educated, even as old people, because it's something that you'll never know, as we've talked about last night, you'll never know where your interests will start to intersect, even if they seem very different. I like micronationalism and I like physics. And originally, those two things on their own don't seem like they fit together. But being able to understand the way to make certain things, the way to put forward a production process, things like that, are things that have helped me immensely. And as well, just being able to study like how to study something, how to take a system, whether it's a governmental system or whether it's a physical system, and break it down and say, these are the parts of it, these are the things that I'm looking to get out of it, how do I get from A to B?
So for all people, not just people in leadership,
All people.
what is 4 categories or 4 things, whether that's just studying a category, reading a particular book, what are 4 things that y'all can watch right now and help encourage you to take that step to move forward? Because I think okay, like understanding citizenship.
Mhm.
Like, what does it mean to be a citizen? Not looking to pass the values of to be a citizen of a certain country, but what is the duty of a human to his nation, and where does he give too much where it's a problem, and where is the problem of giving too little, and what is a responsible choice as a free-willed individual to join a nation? And so these are the kind of questions we're talking about. So what are some things that whether that's, hey, learn your economics, learn, take a course in personal leadership, what are some things that people can do? Read a book, find a course to study.
So I think, of course, as I really applaud both you and Jackie for being a student of history is super, super important. History repeats itself, as we all know, and it also is something that will teach you a lot about whatever it is you're interested in, whether it's micronationalism, whether it's science. Seeing how people have done things in the past and have organized themselves will give you ideas for ways that you can adapt that and interpret that for a modern setting. Ensuring that you, especially the furthest you can go in education, continue to pursue history in some form or fashion, no matter what your interest is. In addition to that, for micronationalists, all micronationalists, whether you're a ruler of a micronation or not, CGP, I think his name is CGP Grey or CPG something, has a great video called Rules for Rulers. And it's a video just talking about how like dictators or kings or things get power and maintain power. And it is essentially talking about like keys to power and making sure that you know what people's value is and how they work together. That's something that's important for rulers to understand because that's how they get that power. But it's also important for the individuals in a society to understand because everyone has their own way that they fit into a society. Everyone has their own voice in that society, and everyone can influence that society. If a society is a network, a physical chain of people, if you start pulling on that chain, you're going to affect the entire thing. So ensuring that you watch that video, I recommend that. And at large, ensuring that you be active in whatever it is that you're interested in. Specifically, if you're a micronationalist, if you're a micronational leader, if there are other micronations that you feel like are more active or are interesting or are doing something that you feel like your nation isn't getting, I definitely recommend that you go and try and join that nation or find a way to help them or talk to them about why that is. The more that you can engage with and get into the inner workings of other nations, the more you will learn about how those nations work and what makes them successful. That's part of the reason why in the future of this channel, I'm excited to be interviewing more people who are doing secessionist movements in the United States. There are differences in opinion that I may have with some of these individuals, but learning about the way that those structures work and about how they grow and about what their cause is and how that aligns similarly with micronationalist views is really, really interesting and is something that we can all benefit from. And I hope that those people that I'm interviewing will benefit from as well, seeing a micronational standpoint. Just trying to work with those people is incredibly important, and trying to find those different voices. The final thing, I guess, is really self-evaluation. No matter what it is that you're doing, no matter how it is that you're pursuing your life, it's important every once in a while, especially when you're in a stressful situation, when you feel like you're not sure if you can keep going with whatever it is that you're doing, you feel like you're failing, always taking that step back to say, what does my life look like right now? Is this important to me? What are the things that I feel like I'm doing right? What are the things that I feel like I'm doing wrong? Because a lot of the time, especially if you write it down or if you just talk it out loud or if you do something that gets it out, you really start to be able to see the bigger picture of things. And especially if everything feels very overwhelming. Sometimes I have my own situations with school and with micronationalism where things get too heated for me. It's really important to just take a step back and think of, well, this is manageable. This is something that if I want to pursue it and if it's important enough for me, I can go about it. I just have to break down what's important and how I need to organize it. Those self-evaluations are super helpful for like mental health and also for planning. Study habits. People talk about study habits all the time.
That's actually something I was just about to say, actually. Yeah.
Absolutely. That people say, you know, there's like active and passive thinking, where if you're very, very focused on studying something, especially if it's a hard concept, a lot of the time your brain will start to shut off at a certain point and will stop working. So it's really important, if you've been focusing on any project or anything that you're working on, to sort of take some time away for a second and to just take a nap or go outside and do something else. Because then eventually, or take a shower. A lot of people have like shower thoughts.
Yeah.
And it's because you're just chilling and you're hanging out. You're doing something that has nothing to do with what you were doing previously. And that's when all those ideas start to flood in. That's when you feel more calm. You feel like you can manage things and start to work through them.
Something I want to add to that, I think those are incredible points, and those are good. They're solid. And something I want to add along those is reading. Well, number one, I would say, on point with what you're saying, is know your religion. I don't just mean religion in the context of what God you serve, or if you don't believe in a God, or pizza's God. It feels that way for me often. No, I'm just kidding. But something I'll throw in there is know your religion. Know, as he's mentioned many times, know what you're passionate about, or run with that and do that. But also know how you behave, and also be aware, especially not even as a leader. In fact, the only way to not be brainwashed is by knowing what you believe and sticking with that. So in the context of cults versus micronations, if you don't want to be in a cult, think for yourself. And the rest of the world either is going to have you be in a cult, or you have to think for yourself. Per se, in the context of the term that we're using as a cult. Know your religion. I would say be mindful of what you believe and challenge yourself in so many areas on your beliefs, because no matter what, the world is going to bring something to you that you haven't thought about. And are you going to be swept away in that and caught away? Are you going to stand there and be like, you know, I can't take this risk. I can't take this process. I can't take this path because that's not who I am. That's not what I believe in. And also, eat it with a grain of salt. Just every time you go to do something, just think about if someone's older and wiser, or maybe they're not older and wiser, but they have more experience in that category. So I just say, number one, know your religion, and be mindful of what your lines are and stick with them. Number two, there's this book called The Law by Frederick Bastiat. I think for micronationalists, the biggest issue that I've seen in the community is not understanding their foundation, not having a foundation to work off of. And so what ends up happening is that people will be like, oh, and we'll make up government types. We'll be like, well, this is my government, it's a this, that, and the other thing because of this thing. But in honesty, with understanding foundational principles behind rights, and the basis behind where power comes from, whether or not that's a personal thing or does it come from God. Like, these are questions that have been asked so many times throughout history. People have answered them, and as micronationalists, we're already at a huge disadvantage. So the biggest advantage that we can have in growing ourselves and our community is becoming educated and realizing that a lot of people have already had answers that we're looking for. Not only do we not need to reinvent the wheel, but we are behind in the race, and so many things on a personal level, on a micronational level, on a community level. And if we just try to keep reinventing the wheel because we're not diligently pursuing after the most foundational things, we're not going to get anywhere. And I think for me, one of the biggest disheartening things, I've told you this, after years I was like, okay, I think I'm ready to join the micronational community. It's big step time. I hopped into the water, and it just felt like I dove into a little puddle and I broke my neck. I think a lot of us have experienced that. It depends on the community. This is no shade to anyone. Everyone has their depth in which they're willing to go, and that's a wonderful thing. Know your depth. Don't lie to anyone because you're not willing to take certain steps, and they're taking certain steps, and then you go and then you leave them because you weren't willing to be honest with yourself. Know your lines, know your religion. But oftentimes in the micronational community, you know, we see all of these, I don't know how to describe it, we're not a lot of study, not a lot of push to it, because the foundational things are not known. Get educated as a person, and study hard to know things, whether or not you're a leader in leadership or not. The value of a nation is dependent on the individuals and what value they bring to the nation. You know, AP can sit here and work his ass off for days and years to come, but if the people in his micronation are not of any forthcoming and giving and whatnot, you can have the best leader on the planet. It doesn't matter. It just won't matter because who you are as an individual is not a pillar of society. You'd rather be something that's the dirt underneath, or something that could be just nice paint. And at the end of it, nobody needs that, and you're not being true to yourself, you're not being true to who you are as a person, and you're willing to tell someone, yeah, I'll walk with you, and you're not, and you're not walking with yourself either. And I think education, not for the sake of being educated, but for the purpose of growing as an individual, whether or not this is the micronational society to the macro society, but to yourself. You owe it, in my opinion, you owe it to yourself to do well for yourself, to have a good quality life. And that comes from not just looking at the future, but staring a little bit into the past, right? And being like, okay, I'm already behind, or maybe I'm not, and working for it. So those are really the only two things that I have to offer to what you're saying as well.
No, I completely agree. I actually wanted to hit off of those 2 points for a second. One, I think for cults, absolutely. A lot of the time when people have studied cults, they say that people who get brainwashed into cults, people think are like stupid people who can't think for themselves. But a lot of time they're really well-educated, really intelligent people, but it's because they had a charismatic leader who promised them the world, who said, you are so important, you are so special, but that those people got wrapped up in that idea and were willing to change themselves enough to become a part of this community that they associated with these good feelings, with this support. But a lot of the time, the thing that breaks people out of this is seeing their family members, seeing people who are more attached to their previous way of life, because they realize that that association they're a part of is just taking away. It's not giving anything. It's just making them into something else. So definitely ask questions. Like you said, know your religion. Understand the thing that it is you want. As well as far as power and as far as talking about things like that, there is a great, there was some video that I watched a long time ago talking about how to start a revolution. And it was the idea of that in anything, whether it's starting a business, whether it's starting a political movement, whether it's doing anything that is of importance, a lot of the time, the first person to jump in and start doing that isn't the person who is the catalyst for it. It's the second person who jumps in. Yeah. There was this specific video that the person who was lecturing was talking about, and it's this group of people like dancing. There's a big crowd in the street, and this one guy jumps in and starts dancing, but nobody else will jump in and dance with him. As soon as a second person jumps in and starts dancing, that's when everybody floods in, because they feel that there's a group there. They feel there's acceptance. So I think the reason a lot of micronations have such difficulty is because, exactly like you said, when there's one person working their hardest to try and make something and everyone else is just excited to watch the progress, that's very cool. But when you have a second person that jumps in and says, I'm going to commit to this just as much as that other person, I'm going to make this my thing, I'm going to really adapt to developing something that can be a culture created around me and created around us. That's when you get that large influx of people.
Something I want to add to that. It's like a cute thing for me that I always. It's one of my sayings. It's believe, dream, and dance. And
I love it.
It to me just makes life so simple. Believe in something, dream about it, and then just dance through life. Just have a grand time, you know. I just want to know that it's good.
No, I completely agree.
Like I like to see dancers, you know. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Self-expression, and it's a way to like overcome fears for things and like social anxiety.
Yes. Yeah. I'm gonna throw into the comments. I see that thing lighting up over there, and I didn't know if.
So KTM said, let's see. Yeah, KTM said history will repeat itself. We all know. Empire of Aeternia. Hey, there you go. Secondly, they said, I've seen that video. It's great. I like how you're able to pull that into a micronational stance. I appreciate it, and I'm glad you vibe with it. It's something that's really, really important to try and pull from other sources to grow from. And I definitely think learning about history, learning about just everything you can is really important to that.
I'm going to use the restrooms. Yeah, I'll do the restroom. Yeah. That's my question. Is this?
It's still tobacco.
I don't want to show up on the stream and just be like, hi guys.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, that's another show.
Ooh, I appreciate it. Thank you.
That something that we do. There's no need for it to be taken.
You right.
Is there anything that we're missing on the stream that we could go on?
One of the things I want to go get, if you can actually hang on to the audience here, I want to go and grab the flag.
Oh!
And show it off.
Absolutely. I'm on camera duty, guys. Hey. I would love to hear your guys' story as well. For those that are on the Aeternian Discord, it'd be really cool to hear your guys' story and how you got into micronationalism and where you see yourself in the community as well. If you have any questions, throw them out there. I'd love to answer them. I know AP will as well. For those that don't know about me and what I do, my name is Gray Mer. I joined as a citizen of Aeternia roughly about 2 months ago. I saw what Emperor AP was doing. I was really passionate about seeing his enthusiasm. It excited me, and just the work that he's done so far is amazing. So I joined Aeternia roughly about 2 months ago. Yeah. My main focus as an individual is really bringing together the micronational community as a whole. My hope is to inspire everyone to be a leader in their own life, regardless of whether or not that's inside of a micronation, in the leadership in the micronation, or as a person. I'm currently, right now I'm on my trip I take every year and I visit micronations. If you have a micronation that you want visited to discuss these kinds of things and whatnot, I guess hit me up on the Aeternian Discord.
Absolutely.
And let's get the conversation rolling. I know, especially from what I understand about the goals of Aeternia, the more people involved, and we want to hear from everyone. And I think the most important things is that let's use our social media, let's use our opportunities with each other as to pave the roads to help each other.
Absolutely. One of the really important things that I just want to commend Gray for doing, like he was talking about, he's going around the country and visiting these micronations. Having more micronations as a part of that trip, if we can do that, will be an incredible thing for micronationalism as a whole. Because actually a proof of that is that we have here a flag from a micronation in Kansas, Delvera.
Yeah, Delvera.
Yeah. Gray apparently has known them for quite a while, has become pretty close to them and learning about their culture and their interests and everything. And they apparently wanted to present Aeternia with this, so I am very honored. Thank you very much, Delvera, if you end up watching this. But I am super excited for what this means. This as a symbol is important because I would not have been able to get a flag from a micronation in Kansas without having gone there myself, and having somebody who is willing and able to do that, and having a network now that can be started of other people who can help to create that chain and help to continue. If you want to start visiting micronations, so long as you are going about it the right way and going about it carefully, maybe Gray can share some tips about that.
Don't invade. No micronational warfare.
Don't do it. It's not a good idea.
Leave your Nerf guns at home.
Come in peace.
Come in peace.
But if you are inspired to do that, I would definitely encourage it. It's been a great experience, and I am excited for the opportunities that people visiting each other and connecting on a personal level means for all of this.
Absolutely. And so something is kind of in the works now. We don't know how well it's going to be set up or where we're going to go with it, depending on how many people join or whatnot. But every year as they take this route and go on in the future, there might be goods being brought back and forth. So if you have a micronational thing where you know, goods of your country or whatnot, work on those. Develop whatever your passion is. Work on that, and if you sign up and I see you around, I'll take a box and deliver it to the next micronation. You know, let's just share goods. Let's just communicate and share our lives with each other and help each other out, you know?
I completely agree. And as well, one of the things that Gray and I were talking about, there's nothing set in stone yet, but on one of these trips I would definitely love to go with Gray. And if that's able to happen as we're getting larger and larger, I would love to be able to do potentially something where we would like set up a meet. If there's like an area where there's more micronationalists that could meet us along the way of our trip, it'd be super cool to kind of all interact and see how that would go and film something or talk or do whatever, kind of meet each other in person, do that swapping of items, giving gifts, and just celebrating what we all have to offer.
Yeah, that'd be fire. I think it'd be good. So I would love for you guys we all would love for you guys to be part of that. And the other thing too is that for those that are part of the Aeternian community, and whether or not you're a citizen or not, there's a lot of people more and more coming into this community. And the truth is, whether or not we like it or not, we don't really have the full option anymore of not being out of the limelight. And this may sound like, you know, how dare you, whatnot, but the truth is a lot of people are looking to not just micronationalism, but the realistic endeavor to do something better with your life. And something that I've seen as a statistic in our country is that a lot of people under 12 are more libertarian in thought than they are leaning towards a particular political agenda, because it's my belief that a lot of young people, we have a serious identity crisis in this country. And not only just a serious identity crisis, but the education and knowledge of knowing what a country is in and of itself, feeling like you actually belong to a country or even a people group or even a something, right, due to just the racist surge or whatever that is going on. Dude, people are just tired in general, especially the youth are tired of not only feeling lost and being lost, but everyone else telling them that this is how it's supposed to be. And I'm going to share one of my favorite beliefs is that nothing is just the way it is. Everything is how you either accept it to be or how you choose to be. So next time somebody tells you that's just the way it is, don't follow their example like that. It's a waste of your time. If you want to do anything in life, you have to go out there and you have to make it happen. And when people go out there and they start making these things happen, they start paying attention to those that are doing that. And the Eternian community, people are watching all of us as a whole. We're doing something and there's support, and every time you like or you comment or you share, people are realizing, hey, there's more dancers, you know, there's more of us coming together. This looks like a great time and opportunity. And I know for you guys, it's like, oh, we're just watching Emperor AP and Gray, but swap us out. Swap us out in your heart and mind with you. And that's the most important thing, and think of it like that. We are equally as important as you guys are, and it's vice versa. And we're right now, sure, we're in the camera right now, sure, but that doesn't mean anything to the community that can be there and participating with all of us.
No, that's very well said. And I think to continue along those lines, if you hear something where, like Gray was saying, that, you know, that's just the way it is, that's how things are, don't feel discouraged as well from being a part of that. Don't feel like that means you have to be an outsider and you have to pull away from whoever those people are that disagree with you. Step into what they're doing, become an insider in that, and then change it through that. Change people's minds, show people that your way may be better, maybe more efficient, and learn why it is that they think that way. Because if someone says that's just the way it is, and then you say, okay, well then I'm not going to associate with you anymore, you don't know what the issue is that's keeping them in that position, and you don't know how your ideas may be able to change that, or how their issues may influence your ideas.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's good. So one last question for you, AP.
Absolutely.
Here's the final question.
Final question.
The final question. To the micronational community, what is your challenge to them as a whole?
My challenge to the micronational community is to, this is a hard one, to come together in a way that is really meaningful. I'm not a fan of micronational organizations, and I want to make a video that's about that in its own right, but the reason for that is ultimately because of the same reason that I don't like micronations who are more fantasy but consider themselves more realist. Building the structure for something, building all of the nice fine detail work on something, but having no foundation to it doesn't allow for something that's going to stand for a very long time. If you have a micronational organization that's filled with a whole bunch of micronations, none of them actively being able to do something or contribute economically or otherwise to the larger organization, all you've effectively made is a micronation made of micronations that's not anything more true than the sum of its parts. So I think my biggest challenge is, whether it's through a micronational organization, I'd preferably like to see it not. Just come together and find ways to interact with other micronations and find ways to make a real effort to change that other nation, and to be able to grow what it is that you all have the opportunity to do and the ability to do by working together, because you have no idea what other resources someone else has that may complement your own. You have no idea of knowing how big you can grow until you get started figuring out how you can align someone's assets and interests with your own.
And one last thing I want to add to this as an encouragement for everyone is that you don't really have to consider yourself to be anything. You don't have to come from anything, really. One of my favorite examples is, I believe all people are like seeds, right? And a lot of times people look at their life as just like the muck and the mire of life, and they look at their like in this soup and this trash and whatnot. But we're all seeds, right? And the truth is, real fertilizer in life is all the good things around you that died, right? And in order to grow as a seed, you have to pull the best parts out of that muck and mire and grow. So don't look at the life around you saying, I came from nothing and the mud and everything's dying around me, but yet you still have life and you have something around you that you can pull from. So gain the courage and gain the strength to pull from that. And like a seed, you have to die first. Realize what's holding you back, what you're too scared to do. Because you know, if you lived in the muck and the mire your whole life, to realize that you're a seed and to grow out of that, to become something different than what everything else around you tells you you need to be, and to pull from that environment wisely, pull the right nutrients, pull the right things, you can grow and become a tree. Forget for anybody else, for your own life, that you don't have to stay there anymore.
Absolutely, and that's a really well thought out analogy, especially because the most resilient plants are the ones that we consider growing in every environment, the ones that are the weeds that you can't seem to kill, the ones you can't seem to dig up and get rid of, because those are the ones that are able to adapt so well and to ensure that they're going to grow no matter what.
Is that a weed? I'm calling 911.
Oh man, but no, I think that was an incredible point. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, that's all my questions for you.
Awesome.
I have nothing
Thank you.
left.
In that case, thank you all very much for watching. Again, thank you, Grace, so much for your amazing gift delivering.
And
from
thank you,
Delvera.
Delvera.
Absolutely, thank you, Delvera. And I am excited for the next time that we do this.
Yeah.
I'm so glad we got to meet.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm pumped. This was wonderful.
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much. And in that case, I guess we're gonna go ahead